The Lancet published 2 studies today indicating that there are 2 vaccine candidates that have been proven safe for humans and also produce strong immune reactions among patients. What is the significance of these findings, do you think? Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. No, I think it is good news. I mean, effectively, we have 23 COVID-19 candidate vaccines in clinical development, and as of today, we add 1 candidate vaccine for which phase 1 clinical data is available. So we have 3, which is available in peer-reviewed journals. Plus, we have 1 other, the BioNTech Pfizer product, which the data is available on pre-publication. So it's great, first of all, to see the data coming through into peer-reviewed journals. I think the data is very new. We do welcome the study and congratulate our colleagues at the Oxford University's Jenner Institute and the Oxford Vaccine Group, and obviously our colleagues at AstraZeneca for getting this data out there. Again, this vaccine was given to 1,000 healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 55, and certainly did not appear to have any serious adverse events other than the expected, in some cases, chills, muscle aches, headaches, and the vaccine did generate neutralizing antibody, I think, in all participants. And in a very small number of participants that were given a booster dose, those responses were even greater. So in generating T-cell mediated responses and generating neutralizing antibody, this is a positive result. But again, there is a long way to go. These are phase 1 studies. We now need to move into larger scale real-world trials, but it is good to see more data and more products moving into this very important phase of vaccine discovery, and we congratulate our colleagues for the progress they have made. It's a complex challenge. Obviously, first of all, we've got to get the candidate vaccines through the system, and what WHO has been doing is working with partners to ensure that we have the maximum number of candidate vaccines and trying to level that playing field so that all potential candidates can be moved through the phase 1 and phase 2 cycles of trials, and that is to remove barriers to that in terms of access to testing, access to assays, and ultimately potentially even access to vaccine trial platforms, and that's what we've obviously tried to do with the solidarity trials for therapeutics. So WHO is working to try and ensure that we have the maximum number of candidates coming through the system, and obviously working with our colleagues in CEPI and Gavi and people within the other organisations contributing to the Access to COVID Tools Accelerator. The second part of that is really getting to a point where we can have scaled up production of any candidate vaccine that shows clinical efficacy, or even scaling up production in advance. And you've seen a number of examples of support to companies and researchers to begin even very, very soon the production of vaccine at risk to ensure that there will be adequate, or would be at least initial supplies of vaccine available should a signal of clinical efficacy emerge. The challenge is going to be when vaccines do prove clinically efficacious, ensuring that there's enough production to be able to supply the needs around the world, and that is in itself the big question. There are a number of different consortia that have been created in the UK, within the European Union, and in the US that are trying to ensure supplies for those populations. But more importantly, we have the COVAX initiative, which is again an initiative of the ACT Accelerator, which seeks to bring together a whole series of countries, both countries who will be traditionally clients of Gavi, but countries well beyond that, to try and create an alliance, in a sense, a consortium that comes together to pre-purchase and advance purchase vaccines within a system allowing for fair and equitable distribution amongst those countries. There is it is not, that mechanism at it presently stands is not going to be able to supply a vaccine for everybody on the planet. We are going to have to prioritise who gets what vaccine at the beginning, depending on which vaccine becomes available, and we're going to have some policy and priorities around the best use of those vaccines. Our colleagues within the ACT Accelerator, the different institutions, and our colleagues within WHO are working very, very hard on the appropriate allocation mechanisms to ensure that those vaccines are distributed in the most equitable way possible. But there are significant challenges and headwinds in order to ensure scaled up production and ensuring that that scaled up production results in as many people as possible around the world having access to that vaccine. Part of that does depend on more countries joining in that COVAX initiative. And the more countries that join in that initiative and that share the risk and the benefits of that process, the more likely it is that vaccines can be made available to more people around the world. And we would encourage our member states as much as possible to examine and look at the COVAX platform as a potential way for them both to contribute to the global good of vaccines and also benefit from that global good, notwithstanding the fact that the other initiatives, and I think COVAX platform, the COVAX facility is working very closely with those other initiatives. And we thank those countries who have already indicated that they would be working to make their vaccine available on a global basis as well as part of national protection.
As you know, Kai, when we launched the WHO and partners, the ACT Accelerator, it was with two objectives. One is accelerating development of products, be it vaccine or therapeutics or diagnostics. And also, second objective was fair distribution, access to those who may not afford to have the vaccine, which is actually your question. And to that end, together with the steering group, WHO, Gavi, CEPI, Global Fund, World Bank, and other partners, we have developed the allocation framework, which is being finalized. But for a fair distribution, and especially access to the poor and those who cannot afford, the most important element will be political commitment, especially by our leaders. And with political commitment, of course, that's the only way you can get, fair distribution. But one of the worrying patterns we see is some countries moving the other direction. Of course, more and more countries are joining the benefits, the advantages of making this a global public good. I mean, the vaccine, making the vaccine a global public good. But we see, if not many, but some countries going the reverse direction. And when there is no consensus on having this vaccine a global public good, it could be actually be owned by those who have money, and those who cannot afford it may not have access to the vaccines. And as you know, Kai, many countries are now calling, many leaders, and there was a recent article, I remember, an op-ed. Some leaders have already have called and stressed the importance of making, when available, a vaccine or therapeutics a global public good. And we want a groundswell of political leaders believing in making a vaccine or therapeutics a global public good. And this should not be considered as a charity to those who cannot afford. The advantage of using fairness or access to also poor countries is the world can really be lifted up and lift itself out of this pandemic together, which can speed up the economic recovery. And the world, unless it's opened up in its major part, I mean, unless the whole world is opened up in this globalized world, it will be delaying the economic recovery, and that means more actually damage from lack of fast economic recovery that can again impact not only on continuing the pandemic, but also its impact on other health problems, and not only health, but continued damage on the livelihoods of citizens. So the most important element here is global political commitment and a consensus on this by all leaders to really, truly commit to using vaccines or any product as a global public good. Thank you.